Good morning, Ray. Thank you for coming. Please help yourself to breakfast, anonymously sponsored. You know, in this week's Parsha, we read about the Torah-Gd, the rebukes that go to the Jewish people. And there's another time in the Torah where they also talk about the rebukes in Parshas Holocaust. And the question, actually in Parshas Kisava, and the question is, if you look at the end of this week's Parsha, when it talks about the rebukes, God gives words of comfort. But in the other Parsha, when he talks about the rebuke, there's no words of comfort. Why in this week's Parsha is there words of comfort following the rebukes, while previously in the Torah, there's no such comfort given to them? So the Panvish of Rav Kahneman says a very profound thought. He goes, this week's Torah and B'chukosai is dealing at a very collective level. We're talking about it's a group thing. But in the Parsha, previous Parsha, we're talking about the Kisavo, it's individually. Now, God's giving us a tremendous promise. He's telling us that despite all the terrible things that happened to the Jewish people, whether it's the Holocaust, pogroms, whatever it was in Jewish history, the Jewish people is always going to survive. That's why there's words of comfort. But in the other Parsha, Parsha Kisava, we're talking about individual. God can't say to every individual they're going to survive, basically, the situation. So therefore, there's no words of comfort there. But in this week's Parsha, since it's a collective thing, God's giving us a guarantee that no matter what, the Jewish people are going to survive. Alternatively, Rabbi Meir Tzvi Bergman has a different way of looking at it. He says, here we are treating God in a casual manner. What does it mean God treating God in a casual manner? Is that we don't acknowledge that what's happening in our lives as God. Whatever's happened, we don't see God in this situation. So the ability to recognize God's direct involvement is a tremendous punishment, and therefore it needs a comfortable level, because God shows that He is here. Haster Aser Panim, He's hiding His face, but He's still there. However, in Parshas Kisava, we deal with individual. There we're talking about where the individual recognizes that God's giving him the punishment. And he says, in that case, it's where it's like a father punishing a kid. Even though you're being punished for it, it still shows the love of God that God has for the individual. And therefore, that's the next word of comfort, because the curse is not really as bad a curse, because we're still involved with Hashem, still involved with God. Have a wonderful day.